Okay, so today what I wanted to do was kind of go over the remake of RE4 and give my first general impressions of the game in terms of a gameplay standpoint and a slight story standpoint. I'm not going to dig too much into the story side of things yet, mainly because it's still fairly new and there are some additions and differences to the game that I don't want to kind of explicitly say yet because it's still a fairly new game, but I will kind of give my general opinion on the story as a whole without going into too many spoilers. Also, in terms of the gameplay, I'm judging it based on hardcore at the moment. That is the highest difficulty possible for a new game for your first time. So I did not play on standard, I did not play on assisted, and it was always going to be a hardcore run. So I'll kind of judge difficulty and gameplay from that difficulty. But yeah, without any further ado, let's just jump into it. So first of all, the story and just kind of the basic story of the game is still the same. Ashley gets kidnapped and Leon is sent by the president to go and get her back. There is a lot more going on the sidelines with the storyline in this game. There's a lot more backstory that's explained as well for certain characters and certain events, but overall the story is pretty much identical to the original, which is good. No massive changes there, and it's good to see they kept the story mostly intact. So yeah, going into the gameplay side of it, again, this is based off of hardcore difficulty, not standard. From what I've heard, it's kind of the general consensus for Village that standard is, if you're kind of familiar with the games, standard is very easy. And maybe a bit too easy for a normal mode, and hardcore is probably the better way to go if you played RE4 before, or if you're very familiar with how the remakes work and play, as well as 7 and 8. There are some moments in the game, on hardcore specifically, that do kind of, they're not frustrating, but they are a bit more difficult than others. There's some big spikes. For example, the water room is still an interesting room. It took me a couple of attempts to get through that on hardcore. There's a bit later on the island that took me a couple of attempts. But you know, with any game, there's going to be parts of the game that are more tricky than others, and it's nice to see that the parts that were tricky in the original game are still kind of tough in the remake as well. So that's good to see. But yeah, in my opinion, I think hardcore is probably the best starting point for this game. It's not too difficult, but it's also not too easy. So I think if you, again, are familiar with, you know, the remakes and how they play, as well as 7 and 8, you're going to have probably no real issues, apart from 1 or 2 sections of the game on hardcore difficulty. Also, at the time of recording this video, I am going through the game on standard, just to do like the whole cleanup achievements with the treasures and collectibles and stuff, and I can say, without a doubt, there is a substantial difference in enemy HP and enemy aggressiveness on standard versus hardcore. So, again, it's a big difference between the two, but like I said, a good starting point for reasonably experienced players is going to be hardcore. Alright, so difficulty aside, no matter what difficulty you pick, there's a lot of gameplay improvements in this game. One thing I really like is the knife system. I think it's such a good way to kind of preserve ammo, line up those melee attacks that are so strong in this game, by the way. Like, definitely try and get melee attack in as often as possible. It's a really good way to preserve ammo and also take out a few enemies at once, and you can pretty much parry almost anything in the game. Obviously certain boss moves you can't, and certain enemy types, there are certain moves they do that you can't, but for the most part you can pretty much parry everything. The only thing is that knives are have a limited durability, so they will eventually break. You can repair the default knife over and over again at the merchant. It does cost about 5k on hardcore, I believe, so it is a bit expensive to do so. But you do find, you know, random knives throughout the run that are less effective, less durable, but they are still there to be used. And going throughout the game, you will unlock different knives as you go. And again, New Game Plus, you can max out the default knife, and it has some pretty good durability once it's fully upgraded. Another new system in RE4 is the stealth mechanic. Now, the stealth mechanic is pretty cool. It's not massively used. There are certain areas of the game where it does work out, like you can sneak past certain enemies in the island section. Again, I'm not going to mention where or what. You can kind of take out small groups in stealth as well, as long as they're kind of unaware of you, obviously. And you can backstab as well in combat, like if you get a stagger and you manage to get behind the enemy in time, you can maybe stab them in the back and it's a one-hit kill. So stealth options are there. It's not like massively reliable. You're going to have the fight eventually, but you can probably get through a few enemies and thin the herd a little bit before you get into the proper fight. What I will say in terms of the stealth mechanic, it's more usable and a lot more useful, you know, early on in the game when you've got limited weapons and you're in a village area. When you get into the castle, pretty much the combat rooms are always combat rooms. I believe there's a couple sections on the island as well that you can sneak through, but again, after a certain amount of kills, you're going to get seen. So don't rely on it too much near the end game. Just try and use it at the very start of the game to preserve ammo and have a good ammo count going into the first few bosses, really. I guess we should probably bring up the whole AI partner system in this game, and this is not just Ashley, by the way. This is definitely more than that. So we'll start with Ashley, and then we'll move on to other moments in the game. So obviously, throughout the game, throughout a big chunk of the game, you're escorting Ashley, and she seems a lot more. She's less of a nuisance, basically. Like, she doesn't really get in the way. I think I've killed her accidentally once, and that was in the war room where she kind of ducked in front of me and I shot her in the head, which was my fault. From what I've played, and honestly, on hardcore, all the way through my first run, she didn't actually die. Like, she went down. I don't know if there's a timer, and if she dies within a certain amount of time, it game overs you. But she goes down as incapacitated, and you can revive her. But yeah, she didn't actually die. So I don't know if it's even a thing that can happen in this game. Again, that wasn't hardcore, so maybe there's a time limit. Maybe she can get hit again. I do not know. But yeah, all I can say is she never died. The only time I game overs with Ashley was when she got carried away, and I couldn't get a shot on the guy, and it game overed me because she got escorted out of the area. Other than that, no game overs from Ashley, which is good. But one thing I wanted to bring up was the additional AI companions you get, and it's definitely kind of leading me to assume that testing something later down the line. What that is, I'll save for a different video, but if you've seen the end credit scene of RE4 Remake, you'll know what I mean. But briefly, you get Luis as like a partner outside of the cabin fight for a brief period, and he fights with you, and it's very good. It feels very good. He doesn't massively influence the fight. They're still mainly focusing you, but every now and again he'll get a shot in that stuns them, or he'll set up a melee for you and stuff like that, and it is pretty cool. Next I'll kind of go over the merchant, and there's definitely been some improvements here as well. So it's typical RE4 merchant, you know, you can sell treasures you find, you can combine treasures with certain things to make them more expensive, and sell them for more money. He sells you weapons, he sells you healing, he's got the rocket launcher, upgrade your weapons and stuff like that, and pretty much the same thing. But also you have these unique requests he offers you throughout the game, where it's maybe go shoot these blue medallions, go kill a few snakes and bring them back to me, something like that basically. And they reward you with exclusive treasures you can use to get exclusive rewards, such as like some weapon attachments, some gunpowders, herbs, whatever you need really that you're selling in that section you can get. Which is definitely a positive addition, you know, having these optional side objectives to do while you're going around the main game, because the game isn't really linear, but you can backtrack through a lot of the areas, and it does give you more of a reason to do so if you want to get some of those optional rewards that he has. And then finally we have, of course, the crafting system. This is kind of being met with a mixed reception for some reason, but basically it's just like in any other RE game of late where you can craft ammo, and it's a handy menu where you can combine your herbs and stuff like that. You can buy recipes off the merchant, kind of like a village, where you can then craft the additional ammo types, and I think it's fine. Again, it doesn't give you loads, especially on hardcore, but it is a nice way to get some extra ammo for certain fights. But yeah, that's it pretty much on the gameplay wise. That's all I wanted to mention. In terms of my own general kind of reasons to play an RE game, replayability and stuff like that, there is a lot to do that just requires you to play the game more. You got your S rank runs, your S plus rank runs, your challenge runs for your speed run, you know, healing and no merchant and stuff like that. There's a lot of that stuff to do. And then in a couple of weeks time, I believe next week, on the Friday I believe, there is the Mercenaries mode, which is coming out, which is going to be cool. And I'd imagine that will probably reward you with extras as well, so who knows. But overall, the game is very good. I honestly think it's a slight improvement over the original. I'm going to wait a few more days to kind of do like a proper review of like the story as a whole and the differences between the original and the remake, but I just kind of want to let the game stew for a bit because it's still fairly new, hasn't even been out for a week yet. It's doing massively well in terms of sales and stuff, which isn't a surprise. It's the most popular game in the franchise, so you know, everyone's going to want to play it. And yes, for those wondering, I believe from what I've seen online and from certain mentions of things in the game that Separate Ways will be coming as a DLC down the line. Whether it's paid for or not, I do not know, but it should be coming. If you do not know what Separate Ways is, it's basically a campaign from Ada's perspective of the game. So it's pretty much an extra campaign, not as long, but who knows what they'll do with it with the remake. It could be more fleshed out, it could be exactly the same, who knows. But yeah, as always, leave your thoughts on the game overall in the comments below. Have you played it yet? Have you played it on standard or hardcore? Did you like the gameplay, the differences in the story? Try not to be too spoilery in the comments. I know it's kind of difficult to do that sometimes, but you know, again, the game's still fairly fresh, so give it a few more days before you outright spoil things. But let me know your thoughts on the game as a whole down below. It's good to be back doing YouTube, honestly. I'm playing a new, quote-unquote new RE game again, and there's so much more content coming for RE4, and I have so many more ideas again for other games in the series as well, so there's going to be a lot more content coming out for the foreseeable future. So yeah, can't wait, honestly, can't wait. But yeah, that's going to do it for me for now. Remember to leave a like on the video and subscribe for more Resident Evil content if you are new around here. Thank you all for coming by, and as always, I'll see you all in the next video.